So in the last video, with the joystick, I went over the very basics. So excuse me, you can watch that for to see the very basics of how these the live blend prims work. So I'm going to start with a cylinder. Use the gizmo, and these maybe go up a level. These videos, I suppose, people that might be familiar with Modeler, but all these SDF tools are the live blend primitives that these are here, rather than the clay layers. It's fairly new. It's in beta still. Still a lot of features to be added. So, and there's a few bugs here and there. So yeah, it's still in beta. So I'll add a bit of a taper, flip that around, and give it a little bit of fillet. And as we said in the last video, like, all of this stuff is fully non-destructive here, so you can change the shape, and we can change all these parameters at any time over the regular clay layers, where you can't once you apply the layer. You lose all the ability to change your parameters or change the shape once you lay down the clay from the preview. So I'm going to just clone that. So as I said in the last video, I'm just holding down the secondary trigger and grabbing the gizmo then, and that's going to clone. And I'm doing this cloning it within the same container here, rather than creating another one from here. If you're working within the same container, you can just keep cloning them, and then because it's not destructive to say, you can change the shape, change the parameters, instead of keep creating new ones all the time. Just clone it and change your parameters. So I might add some blend onto that. Maybe a bit more taper, just to give it a curve it in, sort of. Maybe a bit more blend. Try and smooth it out there just by moving the top up. And I'm going to clone this again. Actually, no, I'm not going to scale it down, so I'll just clone it and bring this up at another taper. Maybe stretch it out a bit. Let that blend. And depending on the sort of design you're doing, like, you can like, that might look good there if you want to leave that there. Or just take the blending down, and then once you convert that across, I think this is an issue with these live blend in all programs that do this kind of live blending with SDFs. When you have two flush surfaces like that, the blend leaves a bulge. So it's not just in Modeler, but you can always smooth this out and just minimize it there. And then once you convert that layer to regular clay, that'll all merge together, and then you can just smooth it out there. So I'm gonna do that again, clone that, and get rid of the taper. Maybe leave a small bit of a taper on it. A bit more, and take it in. That'll just be the lab, maybe a bit of a taper, yeah. So that's pretty much the basic shape. I probably actually want to make this bigger. And bring the taper in a bit more, just to get that blend back there. That looks a bit better. So next I'm going to create the inset here for where the screwdriver sits into the top of the screw head, and I'll be using the compound Boolean operand, which just means I'm going to be grouping them together within the container, and that means it'll be a compound operand, which means I can blend them and then subtract from this without the blend from them affecting this. So if I didn't group them and create a compound and use the blend, you'll see here in a minute, and then just straight subtracted them as layers within this container that weren't grouped, the blend would affect this as well, which I don't want to happen. So I'm inside this, and I'm just going to create a new layer, or we can just do the same thing and then just turn this into a cube. And use taper. And let's see how that's going to. I want to make sure it doesn't. You can see the outline of it here. So I want to make sure. See here, it's coming through the surface. So that means it would leave a hole there. So you know, I could make this wider, make this more steep, or just make this narrower here. And if I turn that into a subtract, we can stretch it out there, and then it's hitting it there. So I'll just bring it slightly in, and I'll bring this back up, turn it back into a union for the moment. And now I'm just going to hold down the trigger and rotate clone, and then I'm going to press the top button on the secondary controller just to snap that. And now you'll see when I use the blend on this, it's going to give me that curve at the side that I want. Whereas if I did that without grouping these together, as I said, it would if the blend would affect this as well, which I don't want. So I'm going to excuse me, select the two of them and create that group and turn it into a subtract. And now we can get that effect without the blend effect in this. One other thing I want to do is I want to make that deeper, so that wouldn't, if you've ever used a screw with a bad head on it, the cheap screws with a bad head, this is the type of thing you're going to get. And the screwdriver keeps turning in the screw, wearing out the head. But anyway, yeah, so I'm going to actually go back here before I turn this into a group, because at the moment there's a weird bug there with the groups that I don't want to run into. So I'm just going to go back before that and stretch this down, take, maybe just bring the two of these up, and in fact, this is the blending issue I was talking about here, because I haven't grouped these yet. But what I was going to say there was, in fact, the reason it wasn't going deeper, even though it was into this, was that from the last video I said about the order of operations. So I'm going to go back again. Didn't even need to do that, because that should be enough depth here, like goes down into the shaft of it. So what I need to do excuse me, is take this group it, and then with the order of operations I'm going to send it to the top. So now that it's on the top, sorry, my mistake, I meant the bottom. I want to put it on the very bottom. I explained that the order of operations in the last video, so I can see now that's going down to the shaft a bit more realistic. And then if I wanted to, I'm just barely on the edge there, but yeah, I think that'll do anyway. And that's how the excuse me, that's how the compound is going to work then, as I said, with the group, so that blending effect doesn't happen. So now for the threads, now at the moment there's no helix, there's no parametric helix primitive in Modeler, so you have to sort of hack this together by hand. So this is far from ideal if you're looking to do kind of you know, clean mathematical sort of modeling. I'm going to be hacking this by hand, and I work this way even sometimes. It gives you that handmade feel. And then if you're rendering something, it can give you that extra, the handmade kind of feel to it when everything's not completely CG perfect. When it's all textured and rendered, you know, it can really add to the realism. But obviously, if you're going to be printing something out, um, you want to have it perfect, you know, especially for a screw thread. But or manufacturing it, you know. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to fast forward through it. I'll do it all by hand, but you don't want to watch me do it all by hand. I'll show you what I'm doing, and then I'll fast forward through it. Right, so for the thread, I'm going to just use a regular layer here, and this will be just your default. So I'll just use the taper, full taper. Take some thickness in, and maybe bring it down a bit. Lay down the clay. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to just put the res up a bit. Lay down the clay, and then just line this up, just to give us that basic sort of thread shape. Lay that down, and then I'm going to just take a quarter of this, so I can use the you could use the crop tool here, but yeah, I think it's broken in this version, so it would have just deleted all these and left us with a quarter. So I'll just have to do it the other way here. I'll just get rid of that. Get rid of that. And now this is going to be the section I'll use, and basically I'm just going to go around like this and line this up by hand, which might seem crazy, but and it probably is. But as I said, you know, doing handmade stuff like this in Modeler, at least for me anyway, adds to the realism at the very end when you're rendering to something that's fully textured. So just to help guide with this, because you know it's going to be very hard to try and get that compound angles on a spiral all the way down by hand and by eye. So one way you can do that is to just to make a guide here, and it is in the stamps. Maybe no, nothing there, and here there is a helix here, this mech spring. Maybe just drop down the res, and maybe about that size. Now it's obviously, this isn't parametric, so you just have to go with what it is here, you know. So I'm just using this just to show you the kind of, you can use this as a method. So lay that down. And also, not just for this is just an example, but for making stuff by hand in general, you know, it's good to get used to the method I'm going to show, because you can use it for all sorts of stuff. And then just do it manually, and it honestly doesn't take long to do this sort of stuff in Modeler. You just have to sort of zone out, so you can kind of, it's going to be hard there. You can go as fast or as slow as you want with this, and you know, depending on how long you spend, you're going to get better or worse results. So you kind of just have to roughly line them up. So you know, this is all we're doing, compound angle sort of stuff here on a spiral, so to try and match up loads of angles, so it's going to be very, very hard to do it perfect by eye and by hand. So I like to just get them roughly in place, and then with a largish warp tool, you can also use the gizmo and try and do it like that, but for me that'll take even longer, you know. So just do it like this, and then I'll show you do do it with the warp tool. So you don't have to go all the way down with this. You can just get a few of the sections lined up to where it comes around. So that's one revolution. And then you go in here with the warp tool and just sort of line it up a bit like that. And then the better you line this up, the neater it is when you merge these together. It's going to be neater here, and it's you won't have to do as much smoothing. So let's say, for instance, I'm not going to do all this in this video. I'm just going to show you how to set them up, and then you just go in and do it manually then. So I'll just speed it up so you don't have to watch that, but you can just eyeball it here. But really, like this sort of stuff, I don't mind doing this in VR. Like you kind of just zone out, and it can be enjoyable because you're doing it by hand. Like, so it's like you're doing something like that in real life. And I like to work with my hands in real life, doing woodwork and everything, and whatever kind of construction work or building stuff. So I actually enjoy this. So let's say that's a revolution, and then you can just select these and select them, use the gizmo, and I'm cloning there with the trigger, and then as I'm still holding down the primary trigger, cloning with the secondary trigger, holding down the primary trigger, and then secondary thumbstick. That's going to give me that array there, so you can make as many as these you like, or as few as you like. So I'm probably going to just leave it, and maybe like that's good enough for the example. And then these are all separate layers, obviously, so I'm just going to get rid of that there. I don't need them anymore. They were just a guide. Excuse me. So what you could do here is select all these just to keep them excuse me, keep them parallel, so you can kind of get a large warp brush. And just do it nice and easy. Because all the layers are selected, you can keep these gaps, and then just do the same for this. Leave that one there, select the warp, quite large then, so you don't leave any sort of, and then you can just go in and then just go in one by one. And as I said, like this might seem a bit crazy to do this, but it really isn't. It's so fast when you get used to working a modeler. Like, it's just so fast to do stuff like this. And as I said, well, for me anyway, it's enjoyable. Like, if you had to do this in a traditional 3D program, well, I know like you'd have all the tools to do it with, spirals and all, but if you did have to do something like this manually, like on the desktop, it'd be just a pain in the arse. But it's actually, as I said, quite enjoyable. And as I also said, I was supposed to just fast forward through this, but it's going pretty quickly, so might as well just keep going. And as I also said there earlier on, you can be the more time you take, obviously, it's going to be a bit neater. When we go to, when you merge these, you can see there, like that's pretty good there. You can really overlap it in. So the closer you get these on the joints, particularly here, the less smoothing that you're going to have to do, because the smoothing then is obviously going to soften out sharpness there when you reach the edge. So I'll probably just do this off or speed it up or something. And see there the way you want to, if I select the two of these together, just to try and even that up a bit. You know, do this stuff by hand. By eye there, just you can kind of eyeball this up. But yeah, I'm gonna, these ones on the end then, you can just get them, finesse them down as they would be on a real screw. And same for the top one there. I usually work, you can see here they've got the warp tool. I usually work at a lower strength. I never work at 100% strength on the warp tool. Right, I'm going to actually, you know, it doesn't look too bad for something that's done manually. There's still some weirdness here. But you can just, as I say, do all that by eye. It's going to be more accurate there if you take more time to do it. And also remember, like, too many people, especially, you know, when people are just starting out, they're so worried about, oh, I have to get perfect quad topology and I have to get this, my wireframes have to look perfect and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, we're all like that when we start off. But as you get more into 3D, you realize that a lot of the time, in a lot of cases, it's just, you don't need all that, you know. And a lot of the time then, when if you're just doing renders, you know, if it's all perfect, everything's perfect, CG perfect, it's just missing that kind of, you know, if this is a screw and somebody's in your father's toolbox out in the shed for 20 years or something, you think it's going to be absolutely mathematically perfect. No, it's going to have dings and bangs, and maybe if it was used a couple of times, put in and out and through in the box, and it's not going to be perfect, you know. And it definitely adds to, like, if you're trying to do photorealistic rendering or anything like that with good texture and shading, especially with modern renders, it's just going to look more realistic. Take my word for that. So yeah, I'm not going to keep, like, this is all wonky here, so I would fix that. I don't want it to be too wonky that it couldn't actually be it couldn't actually be used. But you know, so I might just lessen that out a bit. Maybe push it in here, and you know, it's not too bad, like, for something that's been done manually. And I'm going to leave it out and fast forward through it. And then I'm going to just merge it with this, convert this to clay, merge it, and then smooth it then. Right, so let's say now you have all this perfect. I'm gonna leave it at that. You know, just, it's, if you make sure that these meant to mention that earlier, these corners here, the very peaks, just make sure they're decently kind of lined up, because it'll save you then having to put too much smoothing across there, and then you're going to get dents here. So I'm going to just select all of these, deselect this, maybe go up another level, then I'm going to smooth these once they're merged together. You can see here now, you know, the better they are lined up, obviously, the less smoothing you're going to have to do here. So let's say as well, we're happy with this. Can delete that. We're happy with this. This is all still obviously non-destructive. So let's say, yeah, we're happy with that. And now we want to convert that to clay so we can merge it back to the thread and blend all that in. So I'm just going to go here to convert to clay. And now that is a regular clay layer. And then we will merge this, maybe just step that up a level and merge it back with this. Yeah, and now you see the way I still have some wobbly bits here and there, but this is obviously a lot easier to adjust when it's all separate layers. But I'm not going to worry about that because, as I say, I don't want it to be perfect anyway. And if I did want it to be a bit more perfect, I just spend more time on it. But to me, like that's fine there for what it is. So basically now it's just a matter of going around and just blending this back, smoothing it in. And see here on these corners, as you mentioned, you want to try and maintain them. And they'll probably just maybe, yeah, the properties, maybe give it a bit more spec. Yeah, so basically I'm just going to be going around, going nice and easy there. And same again, I'm going to fast forward through this because that's all I'm going to be doing, is just going over all these exactly the same on each one. Right, so all those joints are done, and then it's just a matter of going around the threads here. And, it's up to you. If you add more res, you're going to get a sharper join there when you smooth. And then obviously you can change the strength of your smooth tool. So that's kind of just purely subjective. Do you want it to be? Do you want the joints there to be sharper or more blended? Depending on what you're doing. So I'll just make this big enough to catch the two of these together, so you don't have to go over it twice. And just follow the thread around. Now you can see what I was saying here, like see the way that's, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. The way that one there, So that's, yeah, it's up to you, whatever way you want to do that, how perfect you want to make it, how much time you want to spend on it. But I'm just going to leave it and just keep going around this. And yeah, I'm going to go all the way to the end, so I'm just going to fast forward this part of the video again. Alright, so that's pretty much that. And you could have put more bevel here, chamfer. You could do all that in the stage before before converting this, but as I said, now it's converted, so you don't have any access to any of those parameters. But you can also, or you can always go in here and smooth it if you want, if it's too sharp. Same for anything here. That's the beauty of having both methods of SDF creation tools, that we have the best of both worlds. There's no other voxel program that has that. Sculpting tools, smooth warp, and the live blend prims. So the likes of these here, these little left over from the blends, you can do whatever you like with them there. Personally, I'd leave them there because it's going to add to, as I say, the realism then when you render. Because if a screw is made, it's going to have artifacts like this left over on it from the manufacturing process. So I would leave them in. And you can see here now, because I have more spec on this, you can still see where this surface here was smoothed together. You can try and just average it out as best you can, or leave the artifacts on it. But personally, I don't mind. It's when this is textured. That's the thing as well about this. People obsessed with these perfect models. Like when it's textured as well, you're not going to see. Now it depends what you're doing. I'm not saying model sloppily all the time. I'm just saying it depends. It's always going to depend on what you're doing. Like if you're building something for somebody, a client or something, that has to have perfect topology, or it's going down the pipeline, people are going to be unwrapping it or rigging it or whatever they're going to be doing, and they expect clean topology, well then obviously you have to do that. But if you're just doing projects for yourself, you can decimate something and texture it with auto UVs or whatever. You can do whatever you like really. So it's obviously a case by case basis. But yeah, I'm going to leave this now, and yeah, that'll do the job. Like it's not too bad really for doing it by hand. And as I said, it's not, the purpose isn't, oh look, we have to be able to create a screw thread, and the purpose is to show you a very useful technique of modeler, and that's hand making something like this from loads of different parts and then merging them together and blending them in. And I used that extensively on a project I recently did. It was a 24-inch or 1:6 scale or whatever, or 1:4 scale I think it was, a big 3D printed warrior angel character, and I used that technique on her for most of the all the ornamental parts that made up all the armor and everything. I've made them all in small sections so I could get all intricate sort of curves in the designs, and then I just blended them together, merged them and blended them. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that, but hopefully this was helpful. Alright then, cheers, thanks Philip.